The WSL is obviously at a very important juncture right now. Coming off the back of another Euros victory for the Lionesses, obviously the league is at the start of its biggest ever domestic TV rights agreement with Sky and the BBC. And in 2024, Barclays signed the biggest sponsorship deal in the history of women's football in the UK. Obviously, this is all being overseen by the WPLL, taking over from the FA. First time, obviously, the top two leagues being run by an independent company. We thought it quite be, it's quite a nice opportunity, I think, to take stock of what the WPLL has done.
WSL football, please.
Oh, I can't. Well, I'm already having to get my head around WSL 2 for the championship,
honestly.
right? And I'm done with the acronyms. I'm staying old school, and I'm
Sorry,
calling it what it is.
We're not calling you your actual name.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Basically that. But obviously it does feel like the WSL is thriving internationally right now. I've had a lot of conversations about, where the WSL sits in comparison to the NWSL. Has always been seen as a kind of bit of a rivalry between the two countries. Whose league is better commercially, talent, performances, the structure of the teams. Really lovely stats that the WSL league's global audience went from 26% of overall viewers in 2021-22 to 62% by the end of 23-24. What do we think is the key behind this? In fact, the WSL audience growing so much. There's been so much kind of talk around the impact of YouTube putting the games on a channel where it's easily accessible. You have a great viewer journey. You don't have all the
sign in, click here,
and kind of the sign in issues with the FA player. You don't have all the kind of dodgy interference of the FA player. The quality of the products, the quality of the viewing product is a lot higher. Obviously,
multicam.
This time you're going to have YouTube showing some of the WSL2 games and some of the WSL games that aren't already covered by BBC and Sky. So the platform is still there, but maybe used less than it was last year, but a good opportunity for the championship to get a lot more coverage.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a continuation of, high YouTube figures if games are all being put on at the same time and they're all being put on Sky, because with respect to Sky, and as great as the multi-view thing is, I suppose, I went and recorded games the other day, Liverpool, Leicester, brilliant, press record, went to watch it back. It was Chelsea, Aston Villa, which they had on another channel, because the only way to watch the game was to go into the multi-view setup and select the game. So you can't even go in and record the game I wanted to record. Then you have to wait until it comes out on YouTube to actually get to watch it back, because unlike BBC, you can't go in and watch it back in the same way. So, YouTube is still going to be a hugely important place for people to, not just outside of the UK, but within the UK, to see the games they haven't been able to watch, because all the games pretty much are now being played at 12 o'clock.
Well, I think the big part of YouTube, though, is also free. And I think what we're starting to see now is this kind of the paywall come in. Obviously, there's a paywall on Sky. There's obviously not a paywall on the BBC. You've got DAZN, who kind of introduced the paywall for the Champions League games and then kind of retracted that and decided not to put them behind a paywall. But it could be imminent that they do that again at some point if it becomes, commercially viable to do that at some stage. We've then just this morning kind of received an announcement that Disney Plus is going to be showing the Champions League, just the live draw, not the fixtures as far as we're aware. But it's another platform in which you do have a women's football product that is going to be put behind a paywall. Amazon are obviously making massive moves in the men's games, kind of put a paywall behind that. So it kind of feels like there is this creeping of, which is good in a way, because you want to commercialize the game and you want to make sure there's investment going into the game. But also we are still a growing audience, and having multiple platforms where you're paying 35 quid for Now TV or, Sky, and then you're paying another 15 quid for an Amazon subscription and another 20 quid for a Disney Plus subscription just to access women's football. It might become too high a bar for where we are in terms of our women's football audience at the moment.
Yeah,
that's my concern.
It's finding the balance of when to make that switch, because everything is decided on audience numbers, and audience numbers and viewer numbers get scrutinized to the nth degree. And, there was an article about how viewership has dropped 35% or whatever on TV. And you're like, well, that's probably because more games are now behind a paywall. So, of course, you're going to have a drop in viewership, I would expect. There might be more games on TV technically, but if they're sat on iPlayer, which I guess you can access, but maybe not as easy as if you're watching TV, or if it's on behind a paywall, you're probably going to see a dip in numbers. Mm-hmm. That's why the YouTube access is so important. So it's that balance of growing that audience to a point where you feel you can get them to pay for things. And I think at the moment we're maybe doing that a bit early. We saw it with DAZN. I thought they did that way too early. And I think what annoyed people is not for so long, but they'd say they weren't going to do that. And then they did it. And then they undid it. And it doesn't look great. I think, look, it's great that so many games are getting the broadcast standard of production, which I think is what I'd argue is that should be the main focus at the moment from the WSL.
Oh, I'm gonna miss all those rainy cam lenses and the
wiping.
When the ball comes too close to where the camera
and you go
is,
down.
you go down, but you can't really see the edge of the pitch. That
great.
kind of vibe. Yeah,
Feels a bit like you're on
really old school
on a boat. No, I don't think anybody's going to miss the FA Player or single cam games. But for me, I think they need to be a bit better at prioritizing what is expected from them, and there is a bit of an element of them trying to do everything, trying to talk to Gen Z, trying to do all cool, fun content, which I understand. But ultimately, what people are looking for from the WSL is getting games broadcast at top quality. That is their bread and butter, and that is the thing that needs to be focused on first and foremost. And for me, the rest comes after, once you've got that done, because, people not being able to access the first 15 minutes of the first game of the season, you're not going to be able to turn around and go, well, we did this great TikTok with some players, so why don't you watch that? This is what people come to you for, right? And I think sometimes clubs, federations, a little bit guilty of this too. They want to have all the best stuff for them, which I understand. But ultimately, if you're going to grow the game, you need stories and you need content to be shared by other people who have access to different audiences who maybe aren't warm and receptive to women's football already. And that's how you grow your audience. And I think for the WSL, you need to get your broadcast stuff, bread and butter, done, without the glitches, without, not being able to see some things, without things switching off or whatever it might be. That's what needs to be the focus rather than, and then you can do the other stuff, which I appreciate is important. But for me, the most important thing is you are offering people the game to watch, and it needs to be easy to access and done well.
Well, just to add context to that, so the international broadcast deals for the WSL were announced on the 4th of September. The deals were facilitated in partnership with the global sports marketing agency IMG, who's been appointed the WSL Football's exclusive international media rights representative for its leagues in a new multi-year partnership. The announcement was widely well received, but what people were obviously very much a little bit alarmed about was the fact that the WSL's agreement with ESPN Plus wasn't announced until after the Chelsea versus Man City game. The Athletic's Ashley Polite recently did a really great piece about the WSL's growth in the US, because we are already seeing the stats come out about how, quickly those audiences in the US are kind of translating into our audiences too. So North American audiences jumped 22% compared to the 23-24 season. Disappointing. It felt like a real kind of missed opportunity to get in there quickly and kind of prioritize one of the biggest audiences for the WSL.
And I'm right in thinking they essentially just extended a deal that already existed.
Yes.
So
it was already in place.
Again, why did that take so long? That's where I'm a bit like, your bread and butter are your broadcast. That needs to be the main focus. For me anyway, maybe they'll tell me different and that their content is just as important. And it is important, but, ultimately the football should be the main focus. And, to as well then mess up your first game, I think 15 minutes of it people couldn't view. That's disappointing. And yeah, I just think getting the thing over the line the day before the season starts and then not announcing it, I do think generally there was a bit of a lack of capitalizing on the Euros more proactively. I think it was very much a bit reactive or a bit, assuming we're going to see an impact from the Euros without kind of really throwing everything at it. And I think more could have been done around the build-up of the opening game, including outside of the UK. If the audience is so big internationally, how are you not getting that up and running?
The other side to that, if I'm going to try and play devil's advocate and maybe provide some kind of understanding of why it was done so late, is that yes, the WSL football have had a lot of things to deal with in terms of commercial rights. They've obviously made quite impressive moves in terms of raising the standards. We've seen a minimum salary cap come in. There's a lot of things that they've been doing. We've been in multiple meetings about the fixtures and the schedules and how difficult that all is. They obviously have been doing a lot. They've been doing the rebrand. It's they've been trying to tie up all these big
I would say there was a bigger noise around the rebrand than there was around the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and that went down
like bucket of wet sick, whatever it's called. Cold sick, that's it. Bucket of cold sick.
It went.
It happened.
It happened. But then they've obviously wrapped up, Sky. They've wrapped up Barclays. We've seen the big British gas energy supply. We've had the wrapping up of the deal with TalkSport as well. We can't say the commercial team haven't been bloody busy.
For sure, I wouldn't say that. I would say the Sky and BBC thing happened already before the US thing. And again, it's an existing partnership.
For sure.
So still unbelievable to extend it and to be having so much coverage. But it's not like you were going in cold to someone. And I would also like to think that perhaps those negotiating the British gas deal are a different team to maybe those dealing with broadcast. I could be wrong. Maybe it's all one team doing everything. But again, then that's something you just need to look at. How can
100%.
multiple things be addressed at the same time? And again, it's about prioritizing, isn't it? Like around the content and all of that kind of vibe.
The devil's advocate to that is obviously they've been doing a lot of work around their audience data, trying to find out who's watching, who's tuning in, where their kind of, big growth areas are. The US obviously is one of them, but at the same time, this kind of next gen fan and where their loyalties lie and kind of growing that fan base. And, you were talking then about, how do we appeal to a Gen Z audience? And TikTok is obviously big dog for that. I know nothing about TikTok because I'm too fucking old, but like putting all these the player content out, that does so well for the club channels. I can understand why the WSL football, WPLL, whatever, I've been trying to focus on that to kind of grow that, to be in the best position possibly to negotiate these deals by saying, look, we've already grown our audience from when we took over the FA in last year 2024 to where we are now. Our audience has grown X%, therefore the broadcast rights are now worth X% in the US. That's the only understanding I might have. And also jumping off the back of the success of the Euros, waiting until after that is wrapped up and seeing what the impact of that has on domestic football for the first couple of games to then be in the best negotiating position. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I know.
I'm just
I don't accept
covering all angles.
I don't accept the waiting till after the Euros. That is just an example of being reactive and not proactive. And you have to be proactive in women's football. It is the lesson we're learning all the time: is stop underestimating things that are going to happen, because it proves wrong every single time. I fully understand. Listen, I work in the social media world. I fully understand the desire and need for content, but what people are wanting and expecting from you, your remit is delivering the football for people to watch and to see. You don't have clubs. Clubs aren't able to put their matches on for teams in the US. That is your remit. And that's something I touched on about clubs and this need to have the best content to put out to their audiences and to kind of keep it all in-house. And the WSL is a similar, they want to have all of that kind of content. But if we say like, I don't know, Premier League, am I looking at the Premier League for like the funnest TikToks from the players, or am I looking to the Premier League for the games that you're putting on? I just think remit-wise, prioritize. And if there's not a huge amount of people in the team, which I understand, and you've not been around for a long time, which I understand, prioritize. I just think that's the main thing, because ultimately it should be about the product on the pitch.
Well, I do definitely think the clubs are prioritising growing the US audiences. Like they've had players come in from across the pond, Naomi Girma, Alyssa Thompson, Emily Fox, Kat Macario, just to name a few. They are also going to create loyal US fan bases coming over to kind of, experience the footballers that have gone across the pond. Obviously, like one of the big talking points at the moment is the kind of the continuing the salary cap with the NWSL.
Jesus, calorie cap.
Calorie cap. Yeah, hell. I mean, fucking hell, I could do one of those, to be fair. It's been a very big summer for me. But $3.3 million is the current NWSL salary cap. We obviously have the minimum salary cap in the WSL, but we don't have a maximum at the moment. It'll be interesting to see what London City Lionesses owner Michelle Kang and the impact that her very deep pockets has on the conversations around the salary cap. But it is obviously encouraging new players to come across the pond. But I don't think anyone in the WSL is earning anywhere near 3.3 million just on performance alone. Commercial, fine. I reckon Leah Williamson's probably doing well in excess of that. But in terms of the actual, I don't think that's the thing that's encouraging people to come across the pond. But do we think actually it's the quality of football that's driving players to come across the pond and be a part of the WSL and this new rebranded, commercial rights flying all over the place? They've got the broadcast rights now set up. It looks like a promising league that could overtake the NWSL in terms of revenue, audience. It's growing.
Yeah, I think it's about the football. And I think we go through peaks and troughs of where it works the other direction. I think at the moment it's too young to be drawing narratives from the number of players who've come over or not come over. I think we often see an influx of, more often than not, funnily enough, and I don't know whether it's because one goes and then another goes, but, we had a season where we had quite a few Dutch players in the league. Then we had a season where we had quite a few Australian players in the league. Now it seems to be the turn of US players. And, players want to play Champions League football. Like, that's another draw for top quality players. And I think players like to challenge themselves top players like to challenge themselves in different leagues to see how they get on because the football is different and the challenges are different. So it's an element of that, but equally I think, it wouldn't be surprising if players go the other direction to experience the NWSL. So I wouldn't draw too many narratives from it yet, because I just don't think there's a really clear pattern because of any one particular reason. But it is definitely something to keep an eye on.
What more do you think WSL football can do to grow the league in the US and beyond, really?
I think it's probably learning from matchday experience, learning from the outreach that these clubs do into the communities, because they don't have, a men's club to fall back on. I think they're interesting areas that they can delve into. I think ultimately the focus is the football, the product on the pitch. That should be what we're championing first and foremost. And then maybe looking at game day experiences in what they do in the NWSL. I think about merchandise. What they offer over there is huge. People are willing to spend money, 74% more in the women's game on merchandise. Tap into that. Be proactive, not reactive.
The hospitality packages are pretty sick as well.
Oh, listen, we got our shirt printed at a ground in the stadium, and at halftime they texted us to say it was ready.
Just a flag, I've not actually been invited to do any hospitality this year, so I can only
Game
assume
two.
that I will be watching the games in the stands.
Listen,
which is really sad.
Grascioro had to watch the London City Lionesses game in the stands. I don't know whether it was a have to, but, maybe things are tight, Chloe.
I'm now a poncho-wearing peasant. How much of a fall from grace has that been since last year?
Can you come into the next episode wearing a poncho? So funny.
I might have to, given the rain. Before we go, last week I asked listeners and viewers who support multiple clubs like me to get in touch. We had lots of responses, not all of them agreeing with me, which is bizarre.
Can I just clarify? Because I was only negging you. I wasn't making like an indictment on everybody who supports multiple clubs. I understand that in the women's game. I was just digging at you, but I did get a lot of support.
There's a lot of people who supported my position. I'll tell you that for free, but I'll let you go first.
Let me
just
just
I'm generous.
read some of these.
Go on.
Glow Bry Stinger on YouTube. Supporting two teams in the same league is bad enough, but both of those teams being in the top four, ludicrous.
God, that's...
Tim on Instagram, Rachel, is 100% spot on. It's just bonkers for anyone to support both Man United and Arsenal. It's unconscionable. I think that was something that really upset people, was the two teams you chose seemed to really get under people's skin. At Tingo on YouTube, one club for me. I can admire players on other teams, but will only support my club, Arsenal.
Oh, no, do you know, that's a nice one. Tingo, absolutely get your position. Everyone, unconscionable, ludicrous.
Yeah.
I mean, grow up.
It's just that you're a glory hunter, to be fair, or you just like going after the fashion. That's the difference. It was more an indictment on you than anybody else.
You're lucky we're friends. Layla on Instagram, my contingent, my loyal supporters. Yes, grew up supporting Man United men. Dad's a mank. Oh, I mean, that's a bad start, isn't it? Man United supporting Man United men. Layla, come on. So have a very soft spot for the women, but also grew up near Kingsmeadow, so love a bit of Chelsea. Not opposed to going to any game there. Have been to Arsenal lots, for example, because I love watching quality football, and that's what it's about. Quality football.
Yeah, but in there she didn't say, I support all of those teams.
Look, I'm not done yet. Katie on Instagram said, can't help but love all the WSL teams. Me and my little girl love watching as much as we can. I think I'm still buzzing. Women's football is on the actual telly. I love that my daughter is growing up where it's just normal to play football, watch women's football, and just talk about the players.
Love that.
That's lovely. We're all in together. We're all trying to go the game. We all want it to go in the same direction. And it doesn't matter who you love, all right?
Sorry, you're speaking to a gay woman telling me it doesn't matter who you love. I'm fully aware of that, but thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, you're right. Damn right. Have a think about that. Love extends across all different protected characteristics.
Wrap it up.
All right.